Hello everyone and welcome to our next on-stage interview. I'm Iain McAllister, head honcho of The Giant Brain, and I'll be your interviewer tonight. My guest tonight is a writer and editor with his current job being the editor of Tabletop Gaming Magazine. For a long time there hadn't been any sort of representation of our hobby on the shelves of the nation's supermarkets and newsagents. Tabletop Gaming Magazine put paid to that when it was first published in 2015, and has since become a mainstay of the published writing side of criticism. My guest has continued the work of his forebear Matt Jarvis in promoting the hobby through the magazine. I'm delighted to welcome Chris Eggett to the Giant Brain HQ. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, it's great. I've enjoyed your community a great deal. Sort of, it feels like a very professional and writerly community in a lot of ways to me.
I'm glad we give that impression.
I like it a lot. I think it's people very taking the hobby quite seriously in a way that isn't dour or over academic or anything like that. It's just like because they care, and that's nice.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, we do indeed. I don't know much about your history. How did you come to be the editor of Tabletop Gaming Magazine?
Absolute blind luck, mostly. I have a sordid history in marketing. But that's obviously where I sort of developed my writing in a way that, is to do with a great deal of output. And then at some point during that phase, my brain was obviously beginning to stop working, because that's what happens when you work in marketing. And I decided to start doing literary newsletters.
Okay.
Which I ran every Friday. And that started me along this route of there was that, and then there was also I started a fake music blog.
Okay.
So we'd me and my friends would generate like an album cover, an album name, and a band name, right? And then we think, oh, that's quite funny. Then we mock it up in Paint or something, and then we'd look at it, and then I'd go and write a review of it. And the thing is, at some point, that turned into me writing these fake reviews into people submitting real albums for me to review.
Okay.
So it's a literal story of faking it to make it. Anyway, this is how I got started in actual kind of cultural criticism, I guess you'd say, or criticism around sort of cultural products in that way. And then also that led into the literary thing where I was doing a newsletter every Friday on top of my day job and stuff like that about poetry and books. And and that's really what led me to a position where I could kind of, I can't actually remember if I was called or I called someone when I saw the job, or whether they just called me and told me about it. But I thought, that's a funny idea. I should definitely go for that. Imagine getting to write about board games forever. I'd love to write about games at all. And to write about board games would be even better. Imagine if they liked me. And they like me enough. And here I am. Whether they regret it or not, and whether the readers regret it, well, that's yet to be seen. I'm still here. So
when you were making up your fake bands and reviewing them, did you ever accidentally make up a real band? Did you ever sort of cross paths with a real band by accident?
Not knowingly. I think the thing was, obviously we were doing it with a great sense of irony.
Sure.
We kind of wanted it to be funny, but on that cusp of plausibility. Whereas most bands I eventually got albums sent from, they would be either unintentionally funny, or they were also being intentionally funny. So there was never quite enough to have a crossover, a true crossover there. But that's a funny idea. I've never actually checked if I've accidentally, invented Fleetwood Mac or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of that's my fake it till you make it story.
Literally,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. Yes. It's very. I mean, I will say one of the things, and then we might get onto this later, is. We'll dance around it later probably, is the reason I stopped doing the album reviews. I just cut it one day because the tone of the website was obviously meant to be a brash enemy style review, right? So it was quite mean, to be honest.
Sure.
And then I did a mean one to a real person who probably didn't deserve it, and they emailed me about it, and I just felt so bad I stopped. That's not how it works anymore, by the way, if anyone's thinking about emailing me about a review I've given of one of their games. Although you're welcome to email me about it. I won't be changing my mind or stopping.
So you've obviously had, you sort of alluded to a relationship with games there before you got into cultural criticism. How have you found that having a job in the industry has changed your relationship with playing board games?
So I'm like a pig in muck, is what I was. So that came with a certain amount of enthusiasm, and that also extended my friendship group. One of the things I've learned over time is you can burn out other people whose job it isn't to review games or think about games all the time when you bring 3 games to a games night, and they would actually just quite like to play Catan again.
Yeah, I've definitely had that.
So, I think it's quite a strange thing because you're like, I'm giving you a gift of this, of access to all these things. And obviously they don't care enough. And what if some of them are bad? Some of them might be bad, and really often they are. And I think part of that leads into the other part, which is I'm way more critical of games than I used to be, because I sort of have a running metric in my brain of like I'm trying to create like the perfect collection.
Yeah.
Somehow, and that's a collection of I'm going to say that's a collection of 48 games.
Ooh.
And I think that's how many games someone should have at most. And if you've got more than that, you've probably got doubles in some way, or you've got a problem. And I know there's a great many people with hundreds and thousands of games who aren't shops.
Yeah, I've got about 40 myself, thereabouts.
Yeah, so I think that's a sensible amount for someone who's like highly engaged in the hobby. I think that's a good amount because you're probably being quite honest with yourself about how much you're going to play any of these games, So
yeah, I like to keep my collection, I call it active, so it's they're actually getting played in a given year. I mean, obviously that's been a little more difficult the last couple of years. So I'm just in the process of doing a little bit of a purge just now of some of my collection. And you usually write about that as well, so I'll probably write about that towards the end of the year, like what's staying, what's going, why. Yeah,
I really like those articles. I don't think I can't get away with it in the magazine, and which I think is an interesting like difference between online and offline media. My background is actually, just circle back to that for a second, is mostly online.
Yeah,
so to come to print and just have such the idea of a finite amount of space for the words you're going to put on the page is actually revolutionary in the way you think about the value of your words.
Yeah, a bit of restriction helps, definitely.
Absolutely. So I think things like that, which I love, I don't think we can do in print. I don't think we can do a what am I keeping story.
I know, so a several part series about what the editor has in his collection. Could be interesting.
Someone in the office pitched me about, we have this little tiny little box at the beginning of the mag next to the welcome page, which is our like intro to the mag, where I basically blurb the mag, and it's got a little box that says now playing, and it just says what are the games I'm playing currently, because I'm usually playing about 7 or 8 games a month. So it's only one of them. It's usually one I'm thinking is going to get reviewed for the next issue, and probably I like it, for the most part. And someone did say to me, yeah, you could do that. You could turn that into a real feature, but I don't know how much more of it is than that. They're saying, here it is.
Yeah.
Because it is the entire magazine is basically that, isn't it? What does Chris like at the moment? More or less, Sorry, I may have derailed us immediately.
No problem at all. So mentioned the pandemic there recently. Obviously, it's been harder to meet up in person and play games, and that certainly curtailed my ability to review games quite hard. So what problems has the pandemic caused the magazine in terms of ability to review games?
I mean, the Asmodee shutdown was a huge thing for us in terms of, they are the majority supplier of review copies of games for us, as they are for most people in the industry. Even if you're working directly with a publisher and getting something sent out to you, you are probably getting it sent from an Asmodee warehouse. So that was quite strange. We were very lucky to have already done a reader survey just after I started. And one of the things people said in it was that they were interested in old games.
Yeah.
Which I think is, because it is, the whole industry is frothing for new stuff all the time, Kickstarter and all this sort of stuff. We're always like absolutely tilting towards the newest stuff. And I'm guilty of it as well. I'm so pleased when I've got an early exclusive and I can't see anyone else has got it yet. And I'm in print, so I had to get it a month early as well, that sort of stuff. And then when it's, it turns up and then, it's brilliant and I was right. That's wonderful. That's a great feeling. But then to take a moment back, to sit back and say, okay, we're actually going to do a few different kind of reviews in the magazine here. We're going to go back to some old classics. We're going to pick things and let our reviewers pick things that they really love, that they'd like just to have a crack at reviewing and basically writing a love letter to, for the most part. It also meant that we took on some reviews that we literally wouldn't take on at other times, so and that meant, we reviewed some quite bad games because people were able to send us them from their shed.
Sure.
And that was just a kind of a sign of the moment. But there might be some people listening to that and saying, oh, well, why would you want to review a bad game? And I think there's something in saying that the magazine is itself a product. And as a piece of writing, you do sometimes want to see something bad get a kicking. So it was still quite entertaining in that sense. But I will say it was one of the most stressful parts of my life. But my daughter was born in January
wow. Okay.
So that was about 6 months of last year. It was about 6 months or not 6 weeks, sorry, of normal life, and then we had lockdown. So it's quite good. I got to see her lots, but very, very stressful time of the country's in lockdown. I have a baby here. I'm not sure we're going to get some food or toilet roll. And also all the games have stopped coming in, meaning that the magazine, which we decided to continue to run at 100 pages. A lot of magazines, as you see, will have folded or gone completely digital or otherwise. Continue to run at 100 pages to exactly the same quality we always have, and kept things going. So it was an incredibly stressful side of things. But on the other hand, I would not have got into solo gaming without the pandemic. And so there is that. I quite like solo gaming. I think it's its own interesting niche in the hobby. And it's one of my favorite ways to kind of experience a game, as well as the more common experience of playing with people.
It's not something I've got into myself. Adam, who's on our Discord and who does punchboard reviews, he's quite into solo gaming and has written quite well about what he gets from that. I personally like tabletop gaming for like me seeing people around the table, so I haven't indulged myself, but yeah, it's been a huge thing in the last year or so, and you can see on Kickstarters there's always a demand for solo modes or that kind of thing.
I mean, I know this is probably someone selling their own wares here, but David Terzi once told me that it's something like 50%. They saw a game he added a solo mode to as a stretch goal that got them an extra 50% sales on Kickstarter, as in pledges. And so it's just something that people want because I think for a lot of people it's like an extra safety mechanism for like, I do get to enjoy this still, even if my girlfriend hates it or whatever. I think that's kind of helps people find value there. And also, if you play very good solo games, if you play things like, I really like Oh My Goods, I think that's a really good solo game, and also the recent Veil Wraith from Hall or Nothing, that's a really good example. And I would really recommend everyone go and play that. I mean, even if you just go get it demoed or something, just play it for a little bit, and then you'll suddenly understand what the actual rhythm of a solo game is and why so many solo games get it completely wrong. Because when you are playing Veil Wraith, you're kind of jamming, and it's great. So to shoot off into solo games there for a moment, but yes, that was a really great thing to get out of the pandemic. Despite it being great other negatives as well.
So how do you decide what games actually go into the magazine? Is availability come into the equation with regards to like Kickstarter games or other crowdfunding?
So the truth is that it comes down to, what do I think looks good? What do I think is important for people to hear about? And you're kind of because you're commissioning things, for the month with people, freelancers, you are often kind of taking a punt on things,
Sure.
and that's just part of the game, really. We do generally at Magazine have a rule of like, you have to be able to buy the game. Like, there's no point me reviewing a Kickstarter that you can't get anymore.
Yeah.
There's just no point in us doing that. So we generally don't review Kickstarter games unless there's a. So, for example, the recent, the Kickstarter from 4 years ago, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. That's just been reviewed in the issue that's just gone to print today. It's quite good, actually. But it is like meeting someone from a different time.
I totally forgot that game was being made.
Yes, I know. I think a lot of people did, and it's really interesting. But obviously, I won't give you the whole review, other than to say it is quite good. Feels like a war game, kind of crunchy.
Sure.
And yes, just a little bit out of time. It's very interesting. But that game is available via the web store. That can be sent to you directly, so that is available, and that is the Kickstarter version is the same as the retail version, and that's the version we reviewed, and that's okay to us. We think that's an acceptable thing. And it also allows me to do things like review smaller games or indie games and things like that, where they are only available via direct from the creator.
Sure.
For example.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing there. But obviously, shipping and the pandemic and all that has made things very difficult in that regard. So sometimes we're a little bit out, and we might be a bit early, or it might be, in this case, a few months early for some things actually landing in the shops. So
yeah, it's been. I really feel for any Kickstarter creator in the middle of distribution, in the middle of like getting their stuff actually sent over is just. I don't know what they do, because we've reported on the cast several times about the rising prices of cargo containers and shipping in general. It's just, yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, and also, my stance is I'm happy to wait, and I think most people are happy to wait.
Yeah,
because we've already waited a bit. It's not going to hurt us to wait a bit longer for a game. It's fine. There's other things to consider, and eventually this will probably work itself out in terms of the actual logistical problem of where the containers are. Probably. We don't really know. I'm not an expert. But yes, that those price hikes are horrendous. I mean, we spoke to Clint Bahati, the designer of Necromolds, which is again reviewed in this issue. A game you can only get from them directly at this point in time, but you will be able to hopefully get a retail version once things calm down a bit. And I mean, and if you don't know what that is, that's a game where you make little Play-Doh monsters and then do a war game. And obviously when you kill the other person, you smush them. It's great. It's absolutely joyous and very silly, very light, and very, very adaptable there. But he said to us, he basically had to say to his logistics people, here's a blank check.
Yeah.
That's what it took for him to get the product out of China, and that's the sad part of it. He did some very clever things of like, I know a lot of people are asking for more money.
Yeah.
For shipping changes. But he basically did a buy this holographic sticker that I'll send you as well, for $10 and stuff like that. There's quite a nice breakdown on the Tabletop Gaming website if people are interested in digging into that. But he sort of breaks it down a bit and explains, there's a lot more people giving a lot more money than everyone giving a tenner or whatever it was he expected, which seems about right, because it's, to kind of to everyone to their means, in that way.
Yeah, well, we can put a link to that in the show notes.
Yes, we could. Yes, that'd be quite nice. I'm a big fan of this game, and I think it's sort of criminal that it's been knocked about in the way that it's been knocked about by fate.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in person. One of the members of one of the board game clubs I attend has got a copy.
Oh, excellent!
And it's a fine looking thing.
I just think it's a very. it just makes me laugh. I mean, it helps that I played this, and my daughter was around as well, so she also was able to interact with it in a way that she wouldn't be able to interact with other games, and that's obviously because it's designed to basically be a toy that secretly gets you into wargaming. So
fair enough. So we've well, I've written on the site several times about sort of how we fund the cast and how we fund the site and sort of the ethical side of criticism when it comes to money and the exchange of money and the exchange of basically free copies of games between publishers and myself and all those sort of ethical considerations. Tabletop gaming obviously has adverts as part of its revenue stream. So how do you approach separating out your writer's freedom to criticize with getting companies to advertise with you?
We have a very clear separated system where I don't sell any ads. To be clear, I don't have to wear any other hats than being the editor, and sometimes going to the sausage rolls on a Friday. So the way it works is the ads are all purchased by the sales team, who are very good and very creative, and do very interesting packages for those who are maybe listening to this and thinking, oh, actually, I can advertise there. That's great. Yeah, you can, but I don't. So today is print day. Yesterday was binder day, which is the day that we get the fake magazine, which is printed out by the digital department at Warner's, which is the group that owns us. And it's basically a kind of slightly rubbish proofing mechanism where they make a fake magazine that we look through for final edits,
sure,
things like that. It's not really until then that I know what ads have gone in the magazine. So, and where they're going to be. So what I do is I plan out where the ads can go, amongst my features and my reviews and things like that. But it's up to the production team and the commercial teams to decide where things go and to sell them. So that makes me very, I like to say, it keeps me pure. But that really does help. The only place where we really get in the vaguest bit mucky in that regard is Charlie, who's the online editor. She does a lot of video content, as you may have seen.
Sure.
She does sometimes we'll do like a paid video or a paid social video or something like that, and they're really interesting to do, and often we sit there and I feel like it's a shame that she's doing it, because then that means she can't go and review it, because you have to have these lines.
Yeah, of course.
You can't say, oh, well, we've received money for you to do this, so it's down on me to do that. Equally, I like the variety of voices, and that's one of the reasons I like doing that as well. So if I do a interview with someone about their game in a preview, for example, then I usually try to get someone else to review the game.
Sure, yeah.
Just not because of any real ethical concerns or anything like that, or because, I'm too matey with the person I've interviewed. It's, it's quite straightforward. Those things, you don't have to become friends with everyone you interview, but it does help to just give that little bit of extra separation away from things. So that's how we have a strict partition between our ads and editorial side of things, and it's as simple as that for us. We don't generally keep the games that we get sent. Often, usually we've got quite a big stack of them, and we'd usually, sell them off at a show or something, like at a stand, for, half price or something, just because otherwise we would just be inundated. We do nearly 30 reviews in every magazine. So, yeah.
So
we would just have to, it would be silly, and you can't just throw them away. So you've got to do something, you've got to get rid of them somewhere. So, but I don't do that. That just goes away to someone else, and they deal with that, all that sort of stuff. It just goes on a shelf, and it gets dealt with at some other point far away from me. And I think maybe we'll come on to this later, but it's important that we remember that when we do things like write about something we like, that we're still helping those people, those publishers,
yeah,
and and it is still work, and you're never being paid in a game, because that would be strange, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be able to give it a true shake,
yeah.
Because then you're suddenly thinking, well, I see value in this now because it's my payment, and that's kind of one of the kind of important things of keeping those things separate, is like, we're never going to pay for a game, and that's the point. And in terms of criticizing people, it's better that we criticize you when you make a bad game so you don't do it again.
Well, you hope, at least. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you can't stop some people, but equally, it means you can believe us when we honestly praise something as well.
Yeah. So what do you think are the best ways for like an independent critic like myself to maintain trust of the audience? So we say up front, if we have got copies from publisher or if we paid for ourselves, that's how we try to maintain some kind of clarity as to what's going on with the games that we get. But we obviously also need a relationship with publishers. We can't just, crap on everything that we get, because otherwise publishers won't send us anything.
Why would you?
No, indeed.
Why you might, you may come to a point where you say, you have to email a publisher and say, look, I'm sorry, I can't cover this.
I've only had to do that once, thankfully.
Yeah. And because it's just like, it's not, there's nothing worth saying about it that is, and, it's like I said earlier, sometimes it's fun to see something get a good kicking, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you would just be, dragging a corpse through the streets, it's not, it's no good. But I think that's the right thing to do, as long as people know how you came across the game and whether you're inferring value in it or not. Whether if you've got your Kickstarter package that you've backed and you spent 200 quid, you're all in. You've got the gold plated minis, and all that sort of stuff. Then you owe it to your audience to say, I did buy this.
Yeah,
I am invested in this. Because then at least then they know what they're dealing with. Ideally, you wouldn't pay for it at all, and you'd just be able to be completely honest and open about it. And that's because that's obviously better than it being complicated at all. But as long as you're being honest, I think that's all we can possibly do, isn't it? Yeah,
it's what the way we try and maintain sort of some sort of ethical standard of the work we do is just to be open and honest about everything, including like what money we get from patrons and things like that as well. That's how we keep the cast going, and we just update people every now and again on the embarrassingly small amount of money we make.
Well, the thing is, so you've got to consider all kind of, in the same way you asked me about the ads, and I say that's completely separate.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, if it would be unethical for me to, this is maybe in the weeds a little bit, but created by the publisher of the magazine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That'd be very strange. And then, so when you do that, if you ever do that with for example, your subscribers, then you're also in a similar position.
Sure.
And that is just one of those things you just have to navigate. Obviously, I say that as if like people aren't subscribed to the magazine, but as I say, the magazine is a product, so it depends how you separate things out. If you're saying your writing is a product in the same way in the magazine is a product, then people are buying it for that. They are supporting you for that product, and that's the thing that you've got to remember. Because if you lose sight of that, then you are really in the sort of PR game at that point, really.
Yeah. There's got that line crossed into being marketing rather than criticism.
Exactly. And I'm sure there's a really good fun job in that somewhere out there.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure if you work for, I don't know how Zatu work for their reviews. I think they're pretty independent, but obviously they do want to sell games. And so, there might be a job at Zatu that does something similar to that. I'm sure that's cracking fun just to be a cheerleader. I'm sure that's great, on such a wide variety of things,
Yeah. So you touched a little bit on sort of binder, and then obviously today's print day for yourselves. Could you describe the process a little more as to how the magazine actually gets put together?
Yeah, so I'll start with what happens today, and sort of work backwards, sure, if that's okay. Yeah. Or rather, I'll loop back to the front. So I'm in an endless hamster wheel of putting together magazines, and today is the day where I am the most relaxed because everything's gone. I've planned the next issue, and I can relax because what's done is done. The magazine is going out to subscribers on the subscribers usually get it a little bit early, but it'll be in the shops and on sale on the 22nd of this month. We've got just to plug it for a second. It's our sort of spooky Halloween issue. We've got an exclusive scenario for Vaesen.
Oh, right, yeah. I've been playing a lot of Vaesen recently. Yep.
Have you? Excellent. Yeah. But this is from their new Mythic Britain.
Oh, yeah.
Collection. So it's really good, and I really like British folklore generally. I think it's slightly sort of underutilized, mostly because of the way Christianization happened in Britain,
sure.
and associated isles. The way that kind of worked meant that. Sorry, this is a really boring tangent, but it's like when you read Beowulf for the first time, you think, "Oh, cool, this is an Anglo-Saxon text," and then you realise actually it's Christian monks writing a translation of an Anglo-Saxon text, and basically it's basically got an air of distance from basically it's looking back at the savages who came before and their rip-roaring adventures, and that's kind of interesting. But I think that sort of takes away a lot of the folklore stuff that kind of Christianization of distance changed a lot of the stories, took a lot of the stories away from the people in a way that that sort of distances us from really understanding our inherent folklore. And so I was so pleased when Free League decided to come out with this as their next setting, and they picked something that I absolutely love. It's the classic. If I say the classic stone hag, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a famous one in sort of Somerset, I believe, and yes, it's just one of my favourite stories. I won't say any more because I'll ruin the scenario. Yeah, we're putting a little quick start as well, so everyone can play it kind of off the page as soon as they get it. They'll have to go check out the website and stuff. So anyway, so that's all gone. That's why I'm overjoyed and super happy today. And then for the next issue, I've already created a flat plan. And that flat plan is just a piece of paper with all the pages on it where I say, this is all the reviews I've commissioned, which I've already commissioned. These are all the interviews that I've usually done already and usually written up already to some degree. Some might still be to come. And they go in and they're sort of planned out in a kind of, it's very rudimentary. The first time you see it, I don't know if you've worked in print before in this way, but if you have, you'll be very familiar with how kind of archaic a lot of it is. It's just
a very little bit, but not very much.
Yeah, it's just a load of boxes with the page number on, and then what you're going to put in them.
Yeah,
and then you add placements as well, where you think it's fair to break things up, and to make sure that there's a double page spread for the marketing team because they want that sort of thing, and then sort of backwards. So from here, so I should. This is the thing: is it is a hamster wheel, so it does all connect. I've already commissioned things from my freelancers. Mm-hmm. They have a deadline of basically a month before. So their next deadline would be, for example, something like the 1st of November for this issue. For this coming issue, and the way that works is people email me. Ideally, they email me a 3-line pitch or something like that says, "Hey, I'd like to do a Ultimate Arkham Horror the card game buying guide because they're re-releasing the whole set soon, which is in the upcoming issue as well. It's really good. Everything's rated at between 1 and 5 Elder Signs, but it's all the expansions, and it's just like it's one of those things. It reminds me of old magazines from when I was a kid, where I'd pick up like a Sega magazine. I think there was one called Mega. And then they'd have just like these useful things of like, here's all the weird controllers you can buy with like turbo on them and stuff like that. And this one's crap, that sort of thing. And I used to love that sort of thing. The utility of it just feels it's got a really nice place in my heart. Anyway, so someone sends me a 3-line pitch, ideally a couple of months ago. I say, hey, that'd be really good for our October issue because it's just before Halloween. Nice and spooky, nice a bit of spooky imagery, lovely stuff. That can all go together. It's really timely. And then that can go from there. Then I get everything in and start editing stuff together, which is just making sure it fits the style and that I've taken out like all the typos and then put 1 or 2 of my own in or something like that. And then from there, off to the designer, who'll bring it back to me and give it to me in a designed up format, and then I make sure everything's legal, as well as, looking good. And then it's back to where we are now, where I've signed everything off. It goes to the designer, we get the binder, we do the final proof, and then it goes off to print. And I think I covered everything there.
Extensive.
But in a really wishy-washy way that kind of basically says you just do it. Which is really no different to writing a extended blog series or something like that online. But because you have these formal things in place and deadlines that involve a lot of ink and a lot of paper, you have a different kind of a relationship with them. So yeah, hopefully that explained it, and hopefully that wasn't too boring for everyone.
No, not at all. No, yeah, I have my own process for getting stuff to the screen, I guess, rather than the page in my case. But yeah, I occasionally let mistakes through as well, and our lovely Discord members occasionally catch them as well.
Yes, I mean, I do miss being mainly digital for the fact that you can just go into the CMS and fix it.
Yeah.
I have let through 1 or 2 hours in my time. Hopefully not to my massive detriment, but probably a little bit. I'd be interested in knowing your process for getting things. To the
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I actually draft in ink and pen these days. I don't really draft to screen because I can't really do it. My brain doesn't work that way. So yeah, most of my first drafts are just straight ink to paper because I find that my brain flows that way better. Just write the thing, have the idea for the thing, or have the review sort of like sketched out in my brain already, and then just sit down and write it, mistakes and all. And then transfer it into a Drive file, a Google Drive file, where I do all the corrections, tidy words up, maybe add some extra bits and pieces. And then there's an add-on you can get, which basically links your Drive file to a WordPress page. So I can just transfer it directly to being a post on the site. And then I go and read through it again, and last bits of editing, pictures, that kind of thing. So yeah, 3 steps.
There's a ongoing joke in the newsletter world. If anyone is interested in media and things like that, you do really well to read Today in Tabs if you're a fan of media and hate reads and absolute garbage like that. If you miss Gawker, if you miss old Gawker, as in the gossip website, not Sebastian Gorka, the guy who hung around with Donald Trump for a while. You could do really well to read Today in Tabs because they have a joke which is basically, the cosmic brain meme. There's, and it progressively goes from like draft on paper to draft in Word to draft in notes and then put into Word, and then to the final version, which is type directly into the CMS, which no one wants to do. Yeah. But it's apparently how many of these modern media jobs work for things like Gawker exist now, and all those media entities.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've massively derailed you there.
No, I can do that. I mean, I just like I like the feel of pen on paper. It just flows better. I use like a fountain pen as well, so there's something about that flow that just hooks into my brain better for actually sort of writing stuff down for the first time through.
I think it depends how you're writing. I often tell me to just shut up if you want to move on. But I like to write in an inobtrusive way, so I might use something like notes. So I used to use things like Notepad++ and stuff like that to do like the most inobtrusive version of things that had the least spell check and the least of anything, because I want to just like slam my notes down. I used to start that way. Now I just don't have the opportunity to do that because I write so much now. Yeah. I think I do 30,000 words a month or something like that for the magazine, plus whatever extras. It's but I think if you're writing, there's a kind of writing which is informational, which can always do with immediately having that structure. And then sometimes there's stuff where you're kind of like emptying your soul onto the page. Yeah. And I assume that's where you're going.
Yeah, there's just a bit more personality in there. Yeah, and yeah, I find it easier to sort of express that in in pen to paper first, and then I can sort of tidy it up a little bit when it gets to the screen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's move on a little bit from my introspection in my writing process.
I'm sorry, I was absolutely down that off and down that rabbit hole. So
it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. I enjoyed that one. So the last year has been one of sort of some controversy and introspection for the hobby. We've covered a lot of sort of horrible things on the cast. Would you ever consider covering more industry news-based items, like the recent controversy surrounding the gaming goat, for instance, and tournament fishing? And if so, can I have a job?
If we were going to, yeah, you certainly could. But we're probably not in the magazine because it's very hard to have a hot take in print.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially for a monthly magazine.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you imagine when it used to be every other month? And then before that it was quarterly. Can you imagine how cold the takes were?
Very cold.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we have to. We personally is a funny sentence. We at the magazine have to take these things kind of from a broader and context providing perspective. So one of the things we are talking about in the office at the moment that Charlie's sort of working up is she wants to talk more about women in card games, especially trading card games, because
as in the representation of women in those games, or
no, just being a woman trying to play.
I see, right? Yeah, yeah.
And how do you even get in? How do the game shops work for you in these experiences? Because I'm sometimes horrified by the experiences she has in game stores, where she's getting really bad service. And I don't mean that in a kind of everything should be perfect and people should, not have their own stuff going on, especially if you're running your own business during a year of pandemic. But yeah, so we have to approach it from this kind of wider context of things. So it's very hard for us to enjoy the rolling around in the muck, which is one of the reasons I really like your Discord.
We do like the muck.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And I miss it a little bit. And so it's one of the I can put a toe in, can't I? Yeah. And that makes that always feels good. But yes, I've written in my notes here, I am always open to pitches. So if you can think of the way to get around to it. I was thinking I really got to reach out to Eric Lang again. I've not spoken to him since here's my first interview on the job, which is sort of kind of quite high stakes thinking about it.
Yeah.
And obviously he's one of the nicest people in the industry. And so he was very kind to me. But I feel we really need to hear from Eric in terms of what he believes his role is now, because he's very much on a path towards trying to kind of make things better in a kind of I'm going to say a social justice way.
Yeah, he's been very active amongst all the sort of controversies in the last year or so.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think he's a really good person to do that, because he is kind of unassailable in lots of ways in terms of the quality of his work and the respect that people have for him. I think he's a really good guy to that, and also he's incredibly charming. So there's not really a better person to pick up that role. And it'd be interesting to talk to him about how we've come to where we are now, which is where we do have things like tournament fishing with the potentially racist frog.
Yes.
Thing, which maybe are definitely not nice people.
Yeah.
From what I've read, so it seems unlikely to be a game that we'd cover in any reasonable way. And so it's best just let it die in darkness. And they got what they wanted, which is a whole heap of attention and people engaging in the culture war that is mostly American and does not apply to a great deal of the rest of us, I don't think, in the way that it applies to Americans.
Yeah, no, the sort of cancel culture or cultural war thing, which is, it's a bit over here. It's definitely more prevalent in the States, but there's a bit of that over here, but it feels like there's less of the controversy amongst the critical community over here. Everyone sort of knows each other a little bit more, and there's less of the Daggers at Dawn kind of stuff that's going on in the American critical community right now.
I just think it doesn't hold well with British people to be that serious about politics. In a lot of ways, I think to die on the smallest hill, you're most likely to channel that energy into your football team or something similar. So it's less likely to actually. That's where our culture wars are, is in these separated and sporting events and things like that. So these separated silos, I think. And that's where a lot of our bad behaviour comes from.
Yeah,
I would say.
I haven't thought about that before. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean that's just me spouting off here. But I think it's interesting because one of the things that is right and kind of a correct reading, I think, by a lot of right wing people, is the cancel culture thing, which is there's a lot of people doing media criticism without any idea what media or criticism is, and they do it on Twitter, and they're mainly doing it to get someone, just do gotchas. And I think there's a weird thing going on there where people are just like desperate for a witch hunt in lots of ways, and that does lead to some weird positions which are just doing the bad faith reading of everything, because people can just be stupid sometimes, and it's okay.
Yeah, people do make mistakes sometimes, and
exactly. And if you're in a pub with them, you'd say,
"Yeah,
come on, that's silly." But on the internet, it's very different because you can't ever back down on the internet. That's obviously very different. But so this is sort of me. I'm probably just going off. I've probably stepped out of my lane, but that's kind of where I feel we are.
It's interesting to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, hopefully not too alienating for people. I do just think there is. I think it would be better if everyone just took a moment to think about whether something needs to be online.
Yeah. So take a moment before you type into Twitter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, obviously the magazine's quite varied in its content. You've got an excellent section, which I love, which highlights games and designers from different parts of the world. Do you think the hobby in general is too focused on American and European or Western design? And is that why you sort of do that section in the magazine?
So that's the section I inherited, but I wish I'd commissioned that, but I would have. I definitely would have. So that's by the excellent Chad Wilkinson, whose writing you can see in quite a lot of places. He's very good. If you are someone with a budget and need a freelancer to write about games, Chad is quite a good person to pick up. But you could probably just go through our magazine or Senet even to find all the.
That's where else I've seen that name. I knew that name was familiar when you mentioned it.
Yes. Yeah. So I love Senet. I think it's I've not actually got my subscription sorted. I need to get all my back issues, but the issues I've read are very, very good. And obviously Dan already writes for the magazine.
Yeah.
And has done for a long time, and so I really like the cover for the new one.
Yeah, it's excellent. Just got it the
dexterity. Yeah, I saw that the dexterity cover.
Yeah.
Just fabulous, and I call it it's the Paris Review of board game magazines. Yep. So it's just it's kind of like a top end arts mag sort of thing. I do really like it. I think it's a really good place for it. But in terms of what Chad does in the Around the World in 80 Plays column, it's really good to highlight all of these places. Things like, did you know how good the print and play culture is in Malaysia, I think, if my memory serves me well? And the answer is I didn't until I read it. And it just shows you how different cultures are developing different ways to get into their way into the hobby. And I think that is really important because it does remind you that there is the rest of the world. And in the same way I said, the cancel culture thing or whatever, the culture war thing is an American phenomenon for the most part. So is a lot of gaming. I think it'd be very hard for us, however, to ignore the fact that it's Germany, the US, and Britain and France pumping out the majority of top tier games.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard to ignore that, and things like that. If you listen to our recent podcast with slightly lower audio quality because of the room we were in with Flavian from Hachette, he explained to me how France works in terms of board games and just things like going to a state-sponsored library event for playing and renting board games in the same way you go to a cafe and pay a fiver for a table, then a fiver for a beer, and then a fiver for some chips or whatever as well. You can go do that all for free as a family, but a family that maybe splits up slightly to go play different games in a sort of library setting. And it's just like, this is how it works that's how it works in France. You can have these experiences which we just don't have here in the UK, and even gaming culture in the US, which is maybe more similar, but somehow people are playing so much, and they have these. I don't know if you saw that guy who built a game shop in his basement.
No, I haven't.
It was incredible. It was an actual game shop. Because I guess all Americans have these crazy sized basements.
Yeah.
Anyway, and in Germany, you go into a normal supermarket and you can buy what we would call like hobby games, usually on the lighter end, but you can buy like proper hobby games that we review in the magazine quite regularly. And we're not quite there yet. I do dream of the day that I can go into Waitrose or John Lewis or something like that, because I think that's kind of where it's going to happen first. Just because, I don't know, the slight elitism of the phrase Eurogame or something like that, I think appeals to a Waitrose audience.
I mean, you're getting more board games in places like Blackwell's in Edinburgh, certainly. There's a massive selection there now. Yes. They're having game nights there. There's more of the sort of hobby-style games are available there. So, yeah, you're seeing more of that in the mainstream, I think.
Oh, definitely. But once you get them in the supermarkets, then you're in a position, because you can go and you can get 3 different copies of Articulate. You can get the big potato games, which is quite good. Yeah. They've snuck them in. And you can usually get some Gibson stuff and some Goliath stuff as well, which some of it is interesting and good. Lovely companies. Yeah. But not necessarily what we want to see. David Turtsey games, don't we? In the supermarkets, that's my challenge to the supermarkets out there. Could put at least a David Turtsey solo mode or something like that. I mean, I really think that if you put Dice Hospital on the shelves of a supermarket at Christmas, people would pick it up. They'd be perfectly happy to give it a go, and they'd have a really good time, and that would be all they do over Christmas. Something like that level. In the same way Target in the US has picked up a load of hobby games as well. That's how we need to get in there.
Yeah, a lot of annoying exclusives that we can't get over here from Target in the US.
Yes. There is that as well. Yes, but that's what they get for being so big, I guess. But I think it's just all of that is really just to say that like we're not there as a gaming culture either, and we could do more to focus on everywhere else, but also we do need to focus on ourselves, and in the sense of like we need to make sure that like the hobby grows properly here as well.
Of course,
And also, I'd just say, like, if you're playing a Come On game, you're probably playing South American designers' work. So Massive Darkness, which is turning up shortly, that's got a couple of South American designers from Santiago. Okay. If you picked up the magazine recently, you may have seen that we covered Mayscape, which is a DeVere product. That again, I don't know why I've just gone for South America here, but that's South American designers. I think that's also Chile again. Thinking about it, okay. But there are lots of designers working in this space, even if the broader gaming culture isn't quite there yet.
So just one last question before we hand over to our audience. There's been a sort of general trend in the last few years to video content being the main medium for the hobby in terms of criticism. I mean, you and I both believe in the written word, obviously, but why do you personally think that the written word has a future as a means of expression? So,
I consume a huge amount of video content, and I think it's a really good way to learn games, understand what games are about. You look at something like Shut Up and Sit Down, mm-hmm. and just like the quality, basically the quality of their gags. They're absolutely on my level in terms of what I want from a video, and our own content as well. Charlie adds pure enthusiasm to absolutely everything she does. So that all said, I think that while we're saying that video is, maybe the main platform, the main medium, I think it's actually people being drawn to the platform of YouTube. What it is access to an algorithm that is geared towards having people watch more stuff, and it's also monetized in a way that writing just isn't online anymore. For those who are old enough and working in media for long enough, they'll remember the point where Facebook everyone pivoted to video for Facebook, and then Facebook reported that they'd been doubling all their numbers accidentally. Then everyone got fired. Yeah. And then everyone got fired. Yeah. It's like BuzzFeed loses half its staff, and then they have to hire a load of people again because obviously they need to do that. So that's a very 2015 comment actually talking about BuzzFeed at all, but still, as a legitimate media entity. So I think that's one of the reasons it's one of the main, mediums for us. And also it's really the best way to learn a lot of games. Go watch Rodney if you don't know how something works. That's generally who I watch when I'm not quite sure what they mean in the rule book because there's a comma in the wrong place, or they've said may, or something like that. And so in terms of why the written word does more is because it doesn't attempt to tell you that it's true. And by that I mean video, and apologies again if I'm going off into kind of theory here or something, but video content is very much always presents itself as a truth because we are taught very much that video is not a thing to be faked. It's an evidence-based, piece of media. Sure. It's you're presenting evidence to the viewer. And so the written word doesn't do that. The written word sneaks into your brain and bounces around a bit, and a little bit like when you're listening to a podcast and you want to pause it to argue with them, whoever you're listening to. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Yeah. That's always a sign of a good. Well, there's two good podcasts. There's one that's good for while you're cooking, and then there's one you want to argue with. And that's they're the ways I divide my podcasts. Or you need to call someone to tell them about this thing. You need to interrupt the podcast in some way. I think that's a good sign of it. And so that's why the written word has a future. It's because it is, look at someone like Charlie Thiel, or we were talked about Senet. Charlie writes for the mag as well. So Charlie Thiel writes our indie shelf column, but he's also known for his very good long form and really interesting kind of meandering kind of approach to things, which are kind of very new games media writing from a long while ago now. Yeah. And so, but the way he writes is a way that is kind of gets into your brain and lets you do the thinking about it, rather than saying this is a thing that does these things and I'm presenting it to you as a truth. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dan Thoreau as well. Space Biff. Yeah. Yes. I've actually yet to really dive in, and I've been told many times that I need to get into Space Biff. Oh yeah, for sure. I very much like 5 Games for Doomsday. Yeah. Ben Maddox. He's very good, very incisive, and usually undercut with quite a lot of wit. So that's always good. But I think that's what the written word will always have for us. Yeah, which is it's something that belongs. It belongs in your brain rather than another data point coming at you. It really lets itself worm in. It's a philosophical end to my questions anyway. Do any of the audience have any questions? If you'd like to come up on stage to ask us and be recorded on the cast, you can use the little hand symbol down the bottom of the Discord, or you can post them in our lecture theatre. Does anybody want to ask any questions for Chris? Hey, Simon.
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, just really enjoyed that chat. Obviously, board gaming is an expensive hobby and probably going to get more expensive. How much does the cost of a game get into your head when you're trying to review it?
So, it's important, right? Because we have to, we are a consumer mag in a lot of ways, right? So we have to consider that, we aren't just like an academic magazine, even though we are happy to wander down those roads occasionally. So it does have to be a consideration. It was a really big consideration for me on my recent Descent review, because the RRP for Descent Legends of the Dark is £175. Yeah. So what we publish in the magazine is we always publish the RRP, so your top end, this is kind of this is what they're trying to flog it at, but you will obviously get it for cheaper than that in some way. And so I really struggled with that. But then I came down to the line of I don't think there's I think there's a lot of people who would not bat an eyelid at the amount of stuff you get in the Descent box and the attention to detail and the love and care that goes into it for a Kickstarter. I think that's someone's all-in pledge there for a minis-based game like that. That's why I came down on the positive side for it particularly, because I had to level with myself and say, this is someone putting out just a really expensive product that's good, and it might be worth it, and it's here now, and they've manufactured it. They've already manufactured it. They're not asking, they're not doing a cheeky pre-order through Kickstarter or whatever. They've actually just gone and done it. And we should kind of respect that in some way. So it does matter. It does matter, and it's something that I think it probably affects me more on smaller games or mid-sized games. A mid-sized game that's 90 quid for some reason. I don't know why, and I can't tell why. Or a large box with one deck of cards in it for £25. Those are the we've all experienced that and gone, they really could have saved my shelf some space by making this a smaller box. And so that's one of the things that comes into it. It's really, I suppose, what I'm saying there, and maybe I've just expressed it to myself better, is to say it's about whether it's a waste. In any way.
If it's value for money sort of calculation comes in there, doesn't it? Like, is this worth the thing?
Is it worth it? And then also, is it too much at all? Is it gross in some way? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like when you think about the recycling, and then you wash up the tin and put it in the recycling bin rather than just throw it away, as you've sometimes wanted to do because you're feeling really lazy or whatever. It's a bit like, kind of like that calculation almost of like, is this worth it? So yes, it does matter, I think. And it weighs quite heavily with me on the bigger stuff. I think more niche products, so things like the gorgeous and beautiful Cosmic Frog, which I think is about 70 quid.
I played Cosmic Frog only on TTS.
It's just really nice. I really like it. Yes. Yeah. But it's, but my review of that was simply, this is the game people think they're going to play when you get Blood Rage out, not Blood Rage, Rising Sun. Because it's like, some big monsters are going to fight. Well, actually, this is the game. This is the game. But I have no problem with it whatsoever because it's sort of lovingly made and it's actually kind of almost in a, hex and token war game area and in terms of what's in the box and the love that's gone into it, and the minis are really nice. There's only a few of them, but you're never going to get big frogs like that again. I don't think. And so because it's more of a niche product, I know that I'm safer ignoring the price a little bit on that because it doesn't matter as much because the people who are going to be into it are maybe already sold.
It's more unique.
Or something like
that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Hopefully that kind of answers the question in some way.
Definitely. Thanks.
So where can everyone find sort of Tabletop Gaming Magazine? You've got anything else you'd like to punt before we wrap up?
So I would love to plug absolutely everything. And firstly, I'd say go to your local newsagents and demand that they get Tabletop Gaming in. And if they don't, subscribe via our website, which is tabletopgaming.co.uk. You can find us on all the social channels, and you should definitely check out the TikToks because Charlie does some weird things on there. I'm too old for TikTok, so I don't really know or understand what it is. But if you are someone who's into it, even as just a passive viewer, go jump in there. It's good fun. And then YouTube stuff's really good, and listen to our podcast, which is on whatever podcatching service you use. But most importantly, the thing I would actually like to plug is our advent calendar. Because speaking about price, this is an interesting product, which is we did last year, right? We did 24 days of delicious, not chocolate, games and stuff. We did accessories, we did actual games and things like that. And it was good, and it sold out really quickly. We did 40 of them. This year we did 100. We've got a few left, but we've priced them. And let me explain what's in it. There's over 14 full games, some which are brand new, some which aren't out yet, some which are actually probably never going to be released. And we think that's quite exciting. But the price of it, and this is my question for you, would you pay £250 for an advent calendar?
Probably not.
Yeah. It's interesting because we know, because the RRP on it in the end, when you add up what it's meant to be, is over 600 quid. It's just like the value's really. The value's really good, and I know that when you're going to open the day 6 or whatever, with your family around, ideally, you're going to be like super excited, and you're going to be excited if you open another one of them by yourself because it's really for you, that one.
My collection can't take another 25 games. It's just not the space.
That's it. Well, I mean, it's a mere 14 full games, and then there's sort of accessories and other stuff that will help you with those other games as well. So really, it's very helpful, I'd say. But that's the thing I'd like to plug. I'd like to plug our weird and exciting advent calendar that I can't tell you about because I can't tell you what's in it, because obviously that would give away the point of an advent calendar, which is there's 25 presents wrapped up in there for you.
You should send me one for review, and then I can tell you what I really think.
You're not the first person to have said that. I am tempted to do a sort of try and get a reaction video or something put together where I show people what's in it, but we just have the reactions. We don't show what the thing is, which might be just a really weird video. I'm not sure about that one.
Sounds like a TikTok in the making.
It does. Yes, I've whatever one of those is. Yeah. So anyway, so I just recommend to everyone to buy the magazine however you want to. And if you don't want to do that, just listen in and just get involved with our online stuff, because we like talking to people. We like the community. And if there's anything, also if you're a writer, which you might well be, and you've got a cool idea, pitch me. It's you can email me through the website. I read everything. If I don't get back to you, just email me again.
We can put a link to it in the show notes so that people can send you pictures.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Yeah. You can put my email address in there. That's maybe even better.
Do that.
And can I tell people how to pitch to me?
Yeah, please.
Send me a very short note just saying, I'd like to do a thing on this thing. It's good for this reason. It's probably about this long. I've got this person I've spoken to. It's kind of cool. And then from there, we'll work it up. That's all it needs to be.
Great.
Some people send me lovely long pitch documents, and they could have stopped after the first 3 words.
Yeah.
Because it's like...
You want a paragraph at most, basically, saying, here's the thing.
Exactly. I think that's what most editors want, really. Yeah. Just at that point, obviously regulars are very different. Regular writers, we barely need to talk because we're kind of all in tune. But yeah, so yeah, that's what I'd like to plug. And if you really want to follow me on Twitter, that would be CJ Eggett at CJ Eggett on Twitter, which is just me retweeting things I find amusing. For the most part.
Fair enough.
And the occasional other bit of writing I might do somewhere else, usually fiction and things like that. A little bit of poetry every now and again, that kind of stuff. And that's me done.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much for joining us and agreeing to be interviewed, Chris. It's been most enlightening. Thank you very much for coming along. Thanks to our audience for coming along tonight. And we'll be putting this out as a podcast in the next week or so. Hopefully, it won't be next week because that's when the new next Brainwaves goes out. It'll be the week after. So whatever date that is, I forget. But yeah, basically a week on Monday, this will be going out as a cast once I've got it all sorted out. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.